All right, everyone, it's your boy Genius out at the range today with the FN Reflex. This is not an extensive review. I will go over some of the specs, but given how much disdain I had for the original FN Reflex, even in the store before I took a single shot from it, I had great disdain for that gun. Then I got out to the range. If it would not have been for the fact that I review firearms, I never would have bought it, right? But I did buy it. Worst fears were confirmed when I got to the range. Absolutely hated it. I understand it was a micro compact and it's going to have a little bit of snap to it over a full-size gun, but with 365 out there and quite a few other available pistols in that category, it was just overly snappy, even for a micro compact pistol, right? It just couldn't stay on target. The trigger was horrible. I did like 50, 75 round review and I sold the gun. So given my disdain for the original one, when I heard they were coming out with another one, I'm like, oh my goodness. But I guess they've kind of adopted the whole SIG, you know, maybe their train of thought, as they started out with a 365 and it was a micro compact that with high capacity. And then 365 just kept growing and growing and growing, got out to the Fuse, the X Macro, the XL, just kept getting bigger and smaller again. Well, I guess maybe they're going to try to maybe do that with the Reflex, as in if someone would have handed me this blindfolded and said, here you go, buddy, this is the X Macro that you often carry, or here's the Fuse that you like so much, I would have totally believed them. Without pulling the trigger, without caressing the slide or anything, just feeling of it in the hand, I would have totally believed them. In fact, it's got a very X Macro look to it. Now, I don't know that they made it for that reason, but either way, it's bigger, it feels absolutely amazing in the hand, and it's got a better trigger. We'll talk a little bit about the trigger here just in a second. So I will go over a few of the specs with you right quick, just so we can kind of get that out of the way. This is not a full review by no stretch of the imagination, more of an initial thought than anything else. And I am going to compare it to the X Macro or the Fuse, whichever one I believe to be more comparable. And we are going to run some rounds through it, so it won't be a one and done. Well, unless it really, really sucks. But either way, let's go over some of the specs right quick. So what we have is a cold hammer forged barrel with a recessed crown. It is an internal hammer fired, single action only. Mag capacity can come in 10, 15, or 18. Obviously mine is 15 and 18. Weighs in at 20 ounces, very, very feather light. Barrel is 3.8 inches. The overall length is 6.75 inches. The rate of twist is 1 in 10. 5.2 on the height, 1.08 on the width. Very, very thin, super thin. I will compare it to the other ones, and on the weight, height, and all that, to the X Macro, etc. The trigger pull, I was doing it on the gauge last night, was getting closer to 4.2, 4.3, but it says 4.4 to 5.5, and the sight radius is 5.55 inches. Like I said, 3.8 inch cold hammer forged stainless steel barrel with the recessed crown, and it is optic ready, obviously, for the RMSC or Holosun 507K footprints, and it does have a tritium filled front sight. So just looking at the numbers on the side, I think it's an Ameriglow, but I'm not totally sure. But I do like an orange front sight. You do get a co-witness if you use the Vortex Defender CCW, which is what I have mounted up here. It's not much of a co-witness. It barely sits above that sight, and if it was not for the cutout in the rear of the Defender, you may not get a co-witness. But I wouldn't even call that 1/3, maybe more like 1/8. I'd like to have a little bit better co-witness. I'm not complaining about it, but it is what it is. Does come with an extra back strap, if you will, with a little bit of an extended beaver tail. Don't like that. I left the back strap on here. That's on here, or was on here, came on here, one slot pick rail up front, and very similar texturing as you're accustomed to on any of the other FNs. Now, One thing I've always said about FN, when people say that, well, you know, they're overpriced for what they are, I've always said, well, it comes with everything in the box, you know. If you need plates, it has plates. Everything on the gun is ambi. Well, that's not true on this one. Although the mag release can be swapped around for the lefties, it is not truly ambi, okay? Not on the slide lock and not on the mag release, and there is no manual safety, okay? Talking about the trigger, I'm going to shoot it a little bit before I talk about the trigger. I did put 4 rounds through it, so technically you're not seeing the first shots because I did need to zero my optic here at about 10 yards. But I will say that the trigger, the very first time I pulled the trigger, it shocked me. It snuck up on me. So one of my biggest beef with FN, if anyone again that has watched the channel, you know, is that the trigger is not that great and it gets better with time. So I hope those 4 shots, I got comfortable enough with that trigger not to embarrass myself here on camera, do the dip of death or anything like that. Does of course have the 18 round magazine. I'm going to put that through it and this 15 rounder and just simply wrap up the video with that. Just some initial thoughts. Does have the front and rear serrations. They are very functional, so deep, nice, nothing to complain about. They are what they are. They're front serrations and they do work, okay? So gonna try to alternate some between the targets here, just get a little feel for it. Like I said, I did put 4 rounds through it already when I was testing it, so let's just see how she does. So I'm not totally sure what happened there. It was like the trigger didn't reset or something. I don't really know. Like I said, these are the first shots through the gun other than the 4 I put through it off camera, which didn't have a problem. Maybe it was me. Maybe I tried to pull the trigger before it reset. I don't know. Not going to call it a problem unless it becomes something consistent. But so far, really, really fun to shoot. Is it as fun as the X Macro? I don't know, but it is a very accurate gun. So, with one of my biggest complaints with the original FN Reflex being the snappiness, the recoil, if you will. Did they make a larger gun and did it help with that? Well, of course. I mean, anytime you make something bigger, longer barrel. Did they do enough? Is it less snappy than the X Macro or the Fuse? I'm going to have to get them side by side. But as much as I have shot the X Macro, I want to say no. Now, it's not helping that that sun is hitting dead on this optic, and it's really just causing the glass to turn almost a complete red. Okay, that's not helping matters at all. So I'm going to put 1 more magazine through it and try to move over here a little bit, maybe in the shade of this telephone pole, so that it's not, or maybe turn up the brightness on my red dot a little bit or something. Just put 1 more mag through it, and I think I can tell you a little bit better. But as far as the recoil in comparison to the original, absolutely night and day difference. This is a very carryable gun, I can tell you that already. Is it less than, is it as accurate as the X Macro or the Fuse? I don't really know until I get them out here and compare them, but I need to put 1 more magazine through it to kind of give you my thought without having them here. So let's do that right fast. Obviously, without actually knowing what happened, I think I just got a little bit too fast on the trigger, and this being a hammer fired, internally hammer fired, as in like say on the X Macro, you can, so I'm gonna pull this trigger, let you see if you can. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but it has some type of a hinge. I don't know necessarily what they call that trigger, but it's like a hinged trigger. So you hit a wall, and it's very much so a rolling brake, but it is a good rolling, a smooth rolling brake, very predictable. With it being internally hammer fired, which a bunch of guns are, the reset is not phenomenal as far as being short. So it comes out a good little bit. And so the reset obviously on the X Macro and other guns I've shot are shorter than that. And it is very tactile. It does push back on your finger. So in that sense, it's a good trigger. Little tiny bit of take up after the reset and that rolling brake again. So what I think happened is that I just simply didn't let the trigger come out far enough before I pulled it again, assuming that it had reset. So I believe that's what happened. Given that it didn't happen again, I don't think anything happened with the trigger, but the X Macro, of course, has a very much shorter reset. Now, better as far as tactile, pushing back on your finger, not so much. It's a good reset. So you can feel it, you can hear it. So I'm gonna put this magazine through here, try to slow it down just a little bit, and you know, a little bit better accuracy. Let's look at the dot here. It's a little bit better. The sun's still hitting it, but I brightened it up a little bit, so it's a little bit better. So I'm gonna slow it down through the first half of the mag and then maybe speed it up a little bit. Try to really take in the recoil. What I might want to take in is a doggone earplug, you know what I'm saying? You know. So what I can say for sure is that when I slowed it down, man, I was just wearing out a tiny little inch and a half group dead center of that 8-inch plate here at 10 yards. I don't want to turn the camera around today. Maybe I'll try to do that tomorrow, because there is a literal river in front of my targets and it's splashing water back here, and I don't want it all over my camera. So you'll just have to take my word for that. When I sped it up over here, I maybe missed one or two. I don't know. So far, it's fun. So far, it's accurate. So far, I'm really liking it. The trigger's taking a little bit of a getting used to. Do I think the trigger is as good as the X Macro trigger? Again, I'm going to have to get it out here to see for sure. But so far, definitely very comparable to the X Macro or the Fuse. And I don't hate the gun. I don't despise it like I did the original FN Reflex. So stay tuned. Again, if the Lord is willing, I will be out at the range with this tomorrow, doing a more in-depth round, putting more rounds through it, put some 124 through it, see how the recoil is with that. And then I'll do a total separate video where I'll compare it to the X Macro and see if I like it better than the X Macro. Or if you're a FN fanboy and you like FN and you want to use this, hey, you can get used to anything that you like and you can use. So there it is, folks. FN Reflex XL, 18 rounds. I think it'll carry very well. I'm gonna holster it tomorrow when I do the full-blown review and just see how well it carries. But that is a super thin gun. I don't know. So far, I like the gun. I'm just saying, like, I get it out here tomorrow, start really running this thing in a better mindset, because I didn't think I was coming out here today. I might really like it. So either way, make sure you subscribe. Most important thing you can do to help support me is to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, comment, tell your friends to subscribe. Consider going over supporting me monthly. $5 a month on Patreon really helped me buy ammunition to review these guns, because I do buy these guns myself. Probably definitely overpaid for this, a little bit over $600. So I'm sure that's above the MSRP or what it'll be here in the next 6 months or so. But either way, it really helps out a ton. You can go over to my website at That's with a D, G squared tactical.com. Click on the three little lines in the corner. It'll pop down, hit support channel. You can donate directly through there. I get that money as well. Super thanks on YouTube. I also get that money. All of it is coveted and appreciated. And as always, the most important thing you'll ever do in this lifetime or ever in general is to make sure you know Jesus Christ as your Savior. If you do not know, you can ask me. I'd be more than happy to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with you. Make sure you take care of that today. And as always, thanks for watching, and to God be the glory.